So let's talk about THCA versus THC. What's the actual difference? It sounds like it should be simple, right? But explaining it can get kind of tricky. Well, today we're going to crack this whole thing wide open with one really simple analogy, and I promise you are not going to forget it. Okay, picture this. A friend turns to you and asks, "Hey, what's the deal with THCA and THC? You know they're related, but how do you actually explain it without, pulling up a chemistry textbook?" It's a super common issue for sure. And believe it or not, the answer isn't some complicated scientific chart. Nope, it's actually a super simple story. A story about fruit growing on a vine. Seriously, this one little analogy is the key. It's going to unlock the whole thing for you from start to finish. So here's where it all starts. The heart of this whole idea is to think of regular THC delta 9 as, well, the prime ripe fruit. Like the most perfect, juicy grape you could pick right off the vine, right at its peak. Let's just hold on to that image, because that's our starting point. Okay, so if THC is that perfect ripe fruit, then what was it before it got ripe, right? That's the logical next question. And that's our first stop. We need to understand the precursor. And that is THCA. It's that simple. It's the fruit before it's ripe. It's still on the vine, it's got all this potential packed inside, but it's just not the final thing yet. Think of it like the before photo in our little story here. All right, so we've got the before picture locked in. Now let's flip over to the after, the final version that everybody's always talking about. And that, of course, brings us back to THC. This is our prime fruit. It's fully ripe, and it's got all of that goodness it was meant to have. This right here, this is the complete after picture. See how it works? So we have the before, which is THCA, and we have the after, THC. But the really interesting part, the most important piece of the puzzle, is what happens in the middle. How does one become the other? Let's take a look at that journey from potential all the way to prime. You see, the real secret here isn't just about what each one is. It's about the process that connects them. There's something that has to happen, a catalyst, a specific trigger that kicks off the change. And that's what turns that unripe potential into the final ripe fruit. And we can actually break this whole journey down into 3 really easy steps. First, you start with the unripe fruit, right? That's our THCA. Then you get to step 2, nature's final touch. Now what's that? Well, it's pretty simple. It's stuff like heat or light. That touch is the trigger we were just talking about. It sets off the transformation and boom, you get the final ripe fruit, which is our THC. And when you lay it all out side by side like this, it just clicks. It's so clear. On one side, you've got THCA. That's the precursor, the unripe fruit, just waiting for that final touch. And once it gets that touch, it becomes THC, the final prime fruit that now has all its goodness. It's a totally logical progression from A to B. So really, when you strip everything else away, it all boils down to this one simple idea. THCA is the before, and THC is the after. That's it. That's the whole thing. And now you have a super simple, really powerful way to explain this to literally anyone who asks. So there you have it. This whole kind of complicated concept, completely unlocked by a simple story about fruit. It just goes to show you, right? Sometimes the most complex ideas are just one great analogy away from making perfect sense. It kind of makes you wonder, what other tough ideas could be explained with a simple story? Something to think about. Thanks so much for tuning in.